Hey everyone, in front of the camera here I have the Kershaw Induction. This is model 1905. Features the Grant and Gavin Hawk access lock. This has been long awaited for over a year, and finally a SHOT Show of this year they announced at their Kershaw booth it would finally be in production. It's part of due to the fact they had some manufacturing issues. And I'm not going to disassemble this knife because I watched two videos on it. One was by Epic Snuggle Bunny, another one was by EDC Gear Reviews. And trying to keep all the pieces together and get that hawk lock back together after disassembling it is a little bit complicated. But it also shows the innovation and how neat the hawk lock is. And it still kind of fascinates me that they figured out that kind of locking mechanism, because it's definitely different and a little out there, but so are a lot of the Hawk's designs. Now, these were only retailing for about $40, which is a fantastic deal considering how well this knife works. This is a manual action knife. And before I get really much more into this, I want to say that this really needs to be upgraded to either a USA produced Kershaw or a USA produced, well, all of them are, but a ZT model. Something with maybe either different aluminum or titanium scales, like different colors of aluminum, or do something with titanium. This is a plastic, maybe doing a G10 or carbon fiber, and upgrade to steel as well, and even maybe put on the KVT system, because as this is really smooth. I believe it's tricked a few people out there and thinking that this does have the KVT system in it, but when you look at the disassembly videos, this is I believe Teflon washers against the aluminum scales, and then also phosphor bronze, I think, washers that are up against the pivot, or I mean the blade tang, and next to the Teflon washers. So yeah, it's a manual action knife without the KVT system, and it still operates really well. It's actually one of the best flippers that I've ever handled, and it's only $40. And that hawk lock is actually really fun to play with. And if you see, you can kind of flip it closed, kind of like an access lock. And if you ever had a Benchmade 300, which was the Butch Ball flipper, you realize that the Omega springs with the access lock do not provide a very good detent for flipping. And although you can still close it like that, here's a Benchmade mini grip. So it's really easy to close. Make sure I don't hit the camera lens here. It's really easy to close a Benchmade access lock by flipping it closed, but as far as making a flipper, the Omega springs just don't provide enough of a detent for that. Well, there's really no detent at all, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly how this works with the detent. I think it's because there's a second spring and a second guide rod there that provides, I guess, the detent. Because when you disassemble this, you realize that there's little notches on, I don't know if you can see them here, but there's notches on the blade tang itself where the pivot is, which is what engages with the hawk lock. I don't know if it's going to show up well on camera. You can kind of see it there between the flipper tab, but that, yeah, there's one of the notches there. So there's two notches, there's one here and then one up there. I believe that's what either creates a detent and also allows it to lock up. So it's really fascinating because this functions very similar to an access lock in a sense that you just pull back this bar here to release the lock. You can flip it closed. It's a little different mechanically, but it also provides you with a great flipper option. This was featured on the Kershaw Ram before, which is a discontinued model by Kershaw. And I think the hawk lock was a little bit different on that one. But yeah, it works. It works fantastic. Now you can't pull back the hawk lock and flip it open. It doesn't work that way. So if you want to kind of do that, when you have a Benchmade access lock, you can flip it open if you pull back the lock. So you can't do that with the Hawk lock, which is okay because this flips really well. So I don't really feel the need to have that feature. Now the Hawk lock also, actually, there's no side-to-side play with this. So this locks up really solid. It flips really well. Disengages really fast. I really like the sound that lock makes too. It's kind of different. So let's get on to the blade here. We have a hollow ground two-tone, the black oxide and satin flats. It's out of HCR13 MOV, which is designated on the back of the blade here, and you can see it's Chinese produced, 1905, and then Hawk lock. So I think this is just featuring the Hawk lock. I think the rest of the design was actually done in-house by Kershaw, is what I believe. Pivot construction, you have a Torx on this side, and I believe it's captured, but there's no Torx head on this other side here. Flow-through construction, so you have standoffs, and it'd be cool if they upgrade this and put some anodized standoffs on there. Aluminum handles. The only part that is not aluminum for the handles is this cover here, which is what covers the Hawk lock mechanism, which is underneath there. Not the thinnest knife, as you can see here. I mean, let's that one's a little chunky too, but the Kershaw Link. So I think because of the Hawk lock mechanism needing to be buried down in the scale, it makes it a little bit wider, which is okay because it still fills the hand very well. And because you have this choil here, which is created by some of the tang of the blade, but it's also created by the handle here. It's very ergonomic in hand. You have about a 3-inch blade, so I think it's like 3.1 inches, so it's right in that good EDC size length. Yeah, this is a great knife. I mean, doesn't feel as smooth as a ZT450 because this has the KVT, but you have something that flips just as well as a ZT450 or 0450. Like, it's dialed in just as well as that. It feels, it is different. It definitely isn't as smooth and nice as this 456 by ZT, but you have to remember, this is a whole lot more expensive. Like, if they made this into a ZT, oh, it'd be great, because I think it would fit so well. One of the oddities on this, though, is if you'll notice here on the pocket clip, I have this set up for left-hand carry, but the screws that come with it are not silver. They're black to match all the other screws, but I actually had to use smaller screws. Now, I took out the pocket clip from the right hand position. This is only tip up, right or left. Now, the weird part is so when it came with it, the screws, when I took the pocket clip off, so I had the screws here from the pocket clip originally. These anchors were actually, I don't know if you're going to be able to see that or not, but they were, yeah, you see where there's on the scale there's those two holes. Those anchors were actually sitting in there to anchor in the screw after it goes through the scale here. And so when I took the pocket clip out, these actually fell out. And at first I was like wondering where these pieces fell from. But yeah, so there's anchors for that side there. I'm not sure why they did that. I've never seen them actually do that with any other models that I'm aware of. But then when I tried to put the pocket clip over to the left side, I noticed that the holes drilled for the left-hand carry were actually not as wide as the holes drilled on the right side, which is kind of really puzzling, the fact that they drilled these for normally what is used in the American-made Kershaws, because even with this, like the Kershaw Ferrite, it looks like it has a similar pocket clip to something like, you know, a ZT450 or a Kershaw Link, the standard Kershaw Link, but the American screws are actually a smaller diameter than the Chinese screws, and that's why a lot of these pocket clips aren't compatible with some of the aftermarket clips. You know, especially with the Ferrite, which was supposed to be designed to be able to swap out parts, such as like the different aftermarket hinderer stuff. The diameter of the screws that Kershaw uses are wider than the ones typically used through the American-made Kershaws or the zero tolerances. But for some reason, I have a comparison here. It needed screws that were this diameter, which fortunately I have a lot lying around, but it came with screws that were that diameter. So I'm not sure how well it's going to show up on camera, but those are wider screws. And so I had some lying around and luckily it worked, but for some odd reason they have the drill bits to drill pocket clip holes for the smaller dimension screws, and they normally use the wider diameter screws, but for some reason when they put the holes for the pocket clip on the left side, they put it with a smaller diameter screw. And if you didn't have any sitting around, fortunately I did, you'd be out of luck, or you'd have to somehow widen those holes yourself in order to accept the screws for the pocket clip. So that's kind of odd. Not sure why that happened, or if this is just because this is one of the early on models that came, or early on copies that came out here out of the production line. Maybe that's part of it, but hey, it's kind of weird why they did that. And I really wish they would actually have all their pocket clips with those kind of screws, because then we have something where the diameter of the screws is more universal along the line of all their USA made Kershaws and zero tolerances, and then we can actually swap things out if they have the same pattern for the pocket clip. But for some reason it seems like most of the Chinese knives use a larger diameter screw. Now it's kind of off topic, but yeah, that's just kind of one of the only problems I've actually had with this knife. Other than that, this is great, and it functions well both left-handed, because you can get really used to disengaging that hawk lock. I will say that flipping it and closing it with the same finger left-handed, it does kind of get a little bit tiring and puts a little bit more wear on your finger, as opposed to if you're right-handed, you can disengage it with your thumb. But it still works really well, and it's still a lot of fun to use. One of the things I'll say is that, so you can swing this fully closed if you just kind of, you know, do that Benchmade style way of closing the knife. But if you don't put enough force on it, you'll hit where that other pin is in the tang of the blade, where the pivot and the tang are there in the blade. And then you have to overcome that before you close it. And there you go. Let's see, how much does this weigh? Should be pretty light. This is aluminum. I can't believe that this is $40, because it performs really well. So 3.95 ounces, just under 4 ounces there. So not extremely light, but not very heavy. I got this one from Kershaw guy. I think he sold out pretty quickly once people realized he had them. I'm not sure if any of the other major retailers have them yet, but I think this is going to be a hit for Kershaw, and I think that if they do upgraded versions, those will sell well as well, because this is a lot of fun. You know, you talk about how fun it is to just sit there and, you know, maybe play with an access lock, or something with a really well dialed in detent, nice flipper frame lock. And this kind of combines those two elements into one knife. So you get to have something that flips really well, but you're able to close it quickly and securely, you know, keeping your fingers out of the blade path like an access lock. And so for $40, it's definitely a great deal, and I would definitely pay more money if they come out with an upgraded version. So I'm not sure where you're going to find these right now. I'm sure that once they hit other retailers, they'll sell out too, because, man, it's definitely worth it. Especially for something in the budget line. I think this is going to sell really well. And for how complicated this is, $40 is like a steal. You know, how interesting that lock is. I mean, yeah, you're not getting the best steal again at HCR13 MOV, but I mean, come on, this is the way that functions. It's worth more than $40 in my mind. So that's all I gotta say about the Kershaw Induction. I think it's a great knife. If you can find it, definitely pick one up, because it's kicking out of my pocket more expensive knives, because it's that fun to play with. I mean, and yeah, this isn't a deep carry pocket clip. You're gonna have a good amount of the knife exposed there, as you can tell. And no, it's not the same pattern as the Kershaw Skyline, so that's not gonna work. But hey, you know what? It's still simple. It still functions well. This is not high traction, so this doesn't tear up your pocket. But because of that flipping action and the ability to swing it closed like an access lock, this has been seeing more carry time than some of my more expensive knives. And so yeah, that's all for the Kershaw Induction. Any questions or comments, leave them down below. Subscribe for more videos, and as always, thanks for watching.